Today's video, we're taking a look at some more NHL signings. Plus, we also have some trade rumors that could be impacted by the 2020 NHL Draft being held in June. We're taking a look at how that could impact teams like Montreal and Edmonton. Plus, NHL player Brendan Leipsic has gotten himself in a bit of hot water. We'll discuss that situation and all the rest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to discuss today. I want to kick things off with a couple of the NHL signings that were announced here since our last video. The Anaheim Ducks have signed defenseman Christian Djoos to a one-year, $1 million contract. Of course, he was acquired last year from the Capitals in exchange for forward Daniel Sprong near the NHL trade deadline. Of course, he ended up playing really for the most part about 2 solid years in Washington before he slowly fell out of favor. Ended up spending the bulk of last year in the American Hockey League between the Caps and Ducks AHL affiliate systems. So obviously they must feel that he's able to play a regular NHL shift again, because this is a one-way contract. So even if he ends up in the minors, he'll still be paid on the $1 million salary. So as I mentioned in yesterday's video, there was another signing of another defenseman in Anaheim on a one-way contract. I can't help but wonder maybe if they would consider moving out one of their more well-established defensemen. Obviously, they have guys like Manson and Fowler and Lindholm. Obviously, they need some of those guys around as well. But I wonder if Ducks GM Bob Murray might take the team in more of a rebuild, and maybe trading one of those more experienced defensemen while the value is still pretty high might be worth exploring. I know there's plenty of teams out there looking for a guy, especially like Manson, who's got a pretty well established, can play a physical game, got a good contract, right shot defenseman. Certainly would be attractive by many teams, and they could maybe get a younger player who could fit into their system. So we'll see if this triggers anything further. I don't expect anything for the short term, but obviously once we get into the remainder of this season, if that indeed happens, or into next year, I could see maybe something taking place. But they're going to probably want to see these guys make sure they can play and contribute before they make such a move. The other signing that we have to announce was the Tampa Bay Lightning signed one of their prospects to an entry-level contract. They signed Dmitry Semikin, who was a 2018 third-round selection out of Russia. He's a right-shot defenseman, got pretty good size, 6'3", 200 pounds. Split last year between the MHL and VHL in Russia. Certainly a very interesting-looking prospect. They have a pretty deep blue line right now, so there's no doubt he'll go to the American Hockey League first, work his way up. And they have some other defense prospects and younger guys already in the system too, so that might be ahead of him on that depth chart. So he's got the size and strength of an NHLer. We'll see how his defensive game works out and if he can work his way into their lineup over the next few years, but still a very interesting prospect to watch here as he progresses to North America. Now, as I mentioned as well, we had a bit of a situation with NHL player Brendan Leipsic, who's currently with the Washington Capitals. There's a lot of information that's been leaked, apparently from a group chat that he had on Instagram with several other players, including minor league player Jack Rathbone. His brother is also included in this group chat, and many others. I'm not really sure who all else is in there, but it looks like so Brendan Leipsic's probably the most prominent name, at least that I've seen in this situation so far, where there's a lot of remarks that were made towards former teammates, current teammates, players' wives, etc. All kinds of degrading things that I'm sure he would never in a million years want it to be made public, but unfortunately have become public. They are saying right now that somebody's account was hacked essentially, and then the information is therefore released. But you can't help but wonder if maybe somebody in the chat might have actually leaked it. I really don't know what took place. I guess we'll see if we ever find out more. As of right now, Brendan Leipsic's brother, who was playing university hockey here in Canada for University of Manitoba, has already been released from the team. So he's been booted off that team. I guess we'll see if there's any other further repercussions from the NHL. There's already been statements issued by the Capitals from the NHL saying that they're aware of the situation. And I guess they're kind of checking into it, doing an investigation, but not sure really. I know this is obviously we cannot condone the remarks and everything that he made. I think his only way that he's going to try to defend himself was that it's a private conversation. But as I would personally say to anybody, you probably shouldn't say anything through text messaging or any kind of online manner, anything that can be recorded that you really wouldn't want made to be public, because these things unfortunately can happen. And when you're a public figure, professional athlete, or anything like that, if somebody wants to try to ruin you in today's cancel culture, it certainly can be done relatively easy if you say or do the wrong thing and get caught here. So I guess we'll see. He has issued an apology, but unfortunately these types of conversations do take place quite a bit in the sporting atmosphere. I know as somebody who's played competitive sports a lot through the years, I've seen and heard many situations. So I guess that's part of the problem. Hopefully many other people can learn from this as an education piece that, this is not a good way to think and not good things to say. And I guess we will see if there are any consequences for Leipsic or anybody else, but I personally can't see him walking back into that Capitals locker room. He made some comments regarding his line mates as being losers. He made comments about some of his former Canuck teammates and some of their wives. So I don't think things are going to go well for him in the NHL for the next little while. So he's also on an expiring contract too. So if the Capitals decide they want to remove him, it's not going to be overly difficult to do. But at the same time, I know from a legal perspective, I'm not sure what they can do and all that. I guess we'll have to see what the fallout is from that here as things progress with this situation. Now, as I mentioned, we have some trade rumors I want to take a look at, mostly involving how some of these teams like the Oilers and Habs will be impacted if we do indeed get a June draft, considering that the one thing that will be different this time around is we won't see the flurry of activity of trades since the NHL is trying to continue the season and come back from the pause to complete the year, have playoffs, etc. They wouldn't be able to have trades unless we're talking about just draft picks or players or prospects that have rights with these teams that are not currently in the NHL. Obviously, you can't see a team make a trade now since the deadline's technically passed and then come back when the season comes back from pause and have that be effective. Obviously, that wouldn't be possible, so it's going to be a very different draft from that perspective if they do indeed have it. I know from that perspective as well that many NHL teams and their GMs and executives would probably prefer to wait to have the draft once they do have a chance to try to complete the season and have things in their normal order, at least, even if they're not normal timelines, at least in the right order that we're used to try to get through the season, have the draft, have free agency, and even if it means starting the next year late, well, so be it. It's better than not having it at all, but I guess we'll see how that happens. But I know in the case of the Edmonton Oilers, though, since there wouldn't be a whole lot of trade activity going on involving players, it likely would be a prime opportunity for them to try to move, disgruntled winger Jesse Puljujarvi, who's not signed, spent the year in Finland, certainly had a really solid year over there, certainly increased his value. There's several teams out there that have, a ton of draft picks, like Montreal, for example, like Ottawa, even like in LA, Detroit. They have a lot of those first, second, third round picks that they could package up a little, package to the Oilers for multiple picks if they want to, second and a third, or maybe a third and a fourth. I don't know what it would take exactly to land Puljujarvi, and if they want to take a chance to get him signed and into their lineup, it might be a small price to pay. So obviously we'll see what can happen here. But the Oilers are one of the few teams who actually have a player that's a known commodity who could be traded, and since he wants out, and it's been rumored before that they were looking for a prospect or a couple of picks or something like that for him, it might be a prime opportunity for that to actually take place. So I guess we will see. But in regards to the Montreal Canadiens, how I want to discuss there is the fact that Marc Bergevin has done a great job at accumulating a ton of draft picks. In this year's draft, he has 14 picks. He had a ton in the last 2 years as well. They already have a pretty good prospect pool, lots of guys that are signed to their ELCs, and they have all these picks that they probably didn't intend to use this year. But if you go into the draft and not be able to make trades for other roster players that are already established and under contract in the NHL, that's going to prove a bit of a waste for Bergevin. Even though it is a deep draft, you can only have so many players under contract. You can carry a maximum of 50 contracts at one time. You can only have so many prospects in your system before you need to move them along anyway. They probably would prefer to use some of these picks to acquire other already established or ready NHL talent. So it very well could be a strategy that Bergevin's worked on for the last few years that could end up being a little bit of a waste in that sense. Now, of course, doesn't mean that he can't package up maybe 2 second rounders and move up higher into the first round, or to get as many high picks as he can. That's certainly a possibility for sure, and he's going to have to get creative with his staff on how they go about tackling that. But clearly, it's not going to be able to be done the way that he likely intended to do. But when looking at teams like Montreal, like Ottawa, like LA, they have some of the most picks in the draft. And of course, they're near the bottom of the standings as well, and kind of need to build up in the prospect pools. But they're all different stages of their rebuilds. In Montreal's case, is a little bit more of a reset or a retool, and they only want so many prospects, like I said. So we'll see what happens here with Bergevin in Montreal. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the teams that are opposing having the June draft. They probably would prefer to wait until the season can be completed, so it can be a little bit more of a traditional format, even if it's not done in person, even if it's done virtually, but they can make trades with NHL talent would still be a little bit more realistic. So there is that of an argument to end up waiting to do it maybe in the fall once they have the season completed, or if they end up canceling the season if they're not able to return once that decision has already been made and we know the fate of that, and we can kind of have a little bit more of a business as usual while they're waiting to start the following season. So let me know what your thoughts are, especially on the situation here involving Puljujarvi and the Montreal Canadiens and the other teams that have all these draft picks without being able to make trades at the draft. Certainly will impact some of the strategies that these teams have been working on for the past number of years while they've been stockpiling all these picks. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.